happening, and where some of us are here together live for the Zoom Mindful Mat Pilates class, and some of you are not able to be here live today, so you will have this recording to use at your leisure. And just a reminder with the recording is that each week I have to throw away the previous recording to make room for the new recording. So if you get the recording, make sure that you download it if you want to save it. So today, in terms of tools that we'll need for the practice, just your roller is all you're going to need for today. And as we were all coming into the room, I was asking if anybody had any particular parts of the body that they wanted to focus on, and neck and shoulders came up, as well as some basic core work, which was very much what I was thinking about today. And I actually wanted to address the shoulders and the neck a little bit, because just talk about it and do some stretches before we start, because it's definitely an area of the body that tends to be sore for many of us, kind of overworked, certain muscles overworked, other muscles not worked at all. And so just a little bit, I don't want to talk too much, but I just want to address arm movement, because that has a lot to do with shoulders, right? And so I think part of the reason why we have issues with our shoulders and our neck is how we think about, or how we relate to using our arms, or how we think about it, whether that's a conscious thought or not a conscious thought, how we think about using our arms, right? So our arms are connected to our torso at the shoulder joint, which is out here. And on the front of the body, the shoulder joint consists of a very small, kind of a bony area coming off of our clavicle, which we call the collarbone, and then a bunch of tissue. And on the back of the shoulder joint, is comprised significantly in part of the shoulder blade, the scapula, and then a bunch of connective tissue. And so your shoulder blade and your shoulder joint and your arm and your collarbone are all linked together. So when we move the arm, we have to also allow healthy movement of the shoulder blade and also of the clavicle, the collarbone. Okay, so we don't want to, many times we don't want to be gripping those bones. We want to allow those bones to be free to move with the arm. Okay, and then just very, very basic, the muscles, right, that we have available to us for use of the arm. So we have the obvious muscles that are part of the arm, what we think of as the arm, right here, right? But these are not super powerful muscles that we have actually here. We have more powerful muscles that cross over the shoulder joint and stem from the sternum on the front of the body across the chest, that are associated with arm movements, all the forward powerful arm movements. And then we have muscles that run across the back of the chest. We have three muscle lines, one that goes across and up, one that goes straight across, one that goes across and slightly down, and then the largest, the latissimus dorsi, goes from the arm bones all the way down to the bottom of the spine. And we have this big V of muscle, right? And it's these larger muscles of the arms that we tend not to recruit for whatever reason. And I find with most of my individual clients that everybody tends to work from the top, and not from the chest and not from the back. And so we want to be aware that we have more than one option in terms of how we use our arms. Okay. So the first thing I was thinking we would do today is a stretch. And so just find a comfortable way to sit. I think I'm gonna just sit on my roller. That doesn't mean you have to sit on your roller, but that's handy, and it makes me sit upright without being on my knees. And I wanted to do a stretch in adduction. So this is where we bring an arm across the front of the body. So that's called adduction of the shoulder joint, right? We're closing it off towards the body. And we use the other arm to embrace or hold the arm that we're stretching, okay? So when we do this stretch going across, we first want to make sure to soften the top, the muscles above the shoulder area, so that the arm can rest into the other arm. So I'm stretching my left arm across. I'm letting my left arm rest into my chest and my right arm, okay? So what is it that we're trying to stretch here? Well, what we're trying to stretch is the back of this cuff back here on the back area of the shoulder joint, okay? So by adducting the arm, bringing it across the front of the body, we want to hold the arm, pressing it to our chest, hold it in such a way where we feel sensations of stretch coming from the back of the shoulder joint and across the scapula, the shoulder blade, okay? And you might even feel the stretch all the way from the spine across the scapula and across the cuff on the back of the shoulder, so shoulder joint. So what I'm doing is I'm strongly drawing my arm into my chest. I'm also slightly pulling my arm away from my back in order to get a pretty decent stretch right there. So that's one stretch that we can do to release tension on the back of the shoulder joint area, right? And so let's do that for the other side. So we'll take the other arm across. We're adducting the shoulder joint, bringing the arm across the front of the body. The arm is straight. The top of the shoulder area is relaxed. And we are both hugging the arm against the body and slightly pulling on the arm, pulling away from the back of the shoulder joint, right? And so on this arm, I feel a bit more pull. I feel a bit more stretch than I did on the first side, right? This might be the opposite for you. So just stretching and opening the back of the joint. And when we're stretching, we're not trying to overstretch. We just want to feel a mild sensation of stretch in this area. But really let that shoulder drop. Let the top of the shoulder area drop away from the ear. And then we can relax that. Now we're going to do some stretches to open up the front of the chest, but we're going to do them from laying on the roller, so we won't do that here. But there's one more stretch that I wanted to do for your arms in a sitting position, okay? And this one is going to be a little trickier for some of us. So what I'm going to have you do is take one arm, bend your elbow, and bring your fingers to your shoulder, okay? So you're touching the top of your shoulder. Now take your other hand, okay, and very gently begin to bring your arm up, okay? Now, when we bring the arm up, I'm going to get closer to the camera because I think you can see this part of my body. As I bring my arm up, this is my scapula. This is my shoulder blade back here. Notice where it's going. It's getting pushed down and around. This is the direction that my shoulder blade goes when my arm goes up, Now, if you can, take your other hand and use your other hand to hold your elbow. You're not trying to break your arm backwards. You're just trying to get your arm up. And you want to feel that your scapula has dropped down and it's coming slightly around underneath your armpit, okay? So you're soft again at the top of the shoulder, okay? This stretch again is opening up the cuff around the back of the shoulder joint, right? It's also stretching a part of your, literally a part of your upper arm bone, your humerus. Okay. So this might not be a particularly comfortable stretch for everybody, right? But it is an important stretch to maintain a functional range for the arm. Okay? And then let's go ahead and release that and shake the arm out. Okay. So what I see a lot with folks when an arm is going this direction, which is actually flexing the shoulder joint, when the arm is going upwards, we inadvertently also teach ourselves, consciously or not, to lift the scapula. But that's the opposite of what should be happening. When the arm goes up, the scapula actually goes down and around, right? So that's why I wanted to start with this stretch, because it can help us to begin to develop a sense for what happens to what healthy arm movement is. So bend your elbow, bring your fingers to your shoulder, use your other arm to begin to bring your arm up. And I'm going to exaggerate, right? So as my arm comes up, I really feel this shoulder blade pressing against my ribs and coming down and around, right? That's the action. Then I'll bring my hand over my head, keep softening the top of my shoulder, and just hold my arm in this position for stretch. So my fingers are touching my scapula back here. Okay. Now, when these muscles are really tight through the back of this cuff area and down the sides of the body, it makes it difficult, if not impossible, to have healthy movement of the humerus bone at the shoulder joint, right? So we don't get the right disassociation between the arm bone and the scapula. They get stuck together. That's what a frozen shoulder is. It's when the scapula and the arm are literally frozen in muscle tension and they don't have a healthy range of motion relative to each other. Okay, and then let's go ahead and release that, right? So those are two stretches I would recommend if you have issues with your shoulders that you do every single day to develop more freedom of movement from the cuff area around the back of the joint. Now let's come on to the roller. So let's get this set up with the roller on the mat, and we're going to lay on our backs on the roller. And here we are going to we can do a stretch to open up the front. Okay. Now, as you're getting yourself settled on the roller, we do not have the same kind of protection at the front of the shoulder joint that we do at the back of the shoulder joint. So I never focus on trying to stretch the front of the shoulder joint without also feeling the whole front of the chest as part of that stretch, right? Because in terms of like strain or even dislocation, it's much easier to strain or dislocate from the front of the joint than it is from the back of the joint, because the front of the joint doesn't have the same amount of muscle protection as the back of the joint, right? So when we stretch the front, we stretch the whole front, not just the joint, okay? So an easy stretch for the front is to lay with your arms reached out in a T, looking straight up towards the ceiling, your spine on the roller. Your elbows are straight, but the backs of your hands are on the floor. So elbows are straight and the backs of your hands are on the floor, and your shoulder, the top of your shoulder is not lifting towards the ceiling. Okay. Now, keeping your arms nice and straight, you want to add a little sensation of reach into this position. So it's like you're extending out through the tips of your fingers, but you're not lifting upwards. Okay. And so we want to breathe in a way where we feel the expansion of the chest on the inhale
and relaxation of the chest on the exhale. So let's take about 6 or 7 breaths here. Maintaining that feeling of reaching the arms out. So very gentle stretch for some of us. Right? And if you're really tight in this part of your body, you might be feeling more stretch in this position. Now, to enhance the feeling of stretch, maintain that feeling of reaching out through the tips of the fingers and start to soften the bends at the elbows so that your elbows and your forearms are now touching the floor. Okay, so you're bending your elbows, but your arms are still out in a T position. And what happened when I did that is one of my shoulder blades got kind of hung up on the roller. So I had to readjust my shoulder blades relative to the roller so that I could be in this more open position for my chest without getting my shoulder blade hung up on the roller, right? So when your elbows bend, right, what I want you to do is to think about doing 2 things simultaneously. Think about bringing your shoulder blades a little bit closer to your spine, but you also have to bring your shoulder joints closer together as well. Because remember that your shoulder blade is the back of your shoulder joint. So you can't bring your shoulder blades together and not also bring your shoulder joints closer to your back in this position. You've got to move both things closer to your back. So now the chest feels more open and I have muscular activation on the back of my chest. So I'm using the muscles on the back of my chest. I'm contracting the muscles on the back of my chest to produce a stretch. So what this has done is it essentially has arched my upper back. So my upper back is no longer resting fully on the roller because I am using my muscles in a way that has pushed my upper back away from the roller. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, what I'm not doing is trying to arch my low back, right? I'm arching my upper back or extending my upper back through this muscular contraction. And then relax that effort and let your upper back rest on the roller. So we're going to do that contraction a couple of times. So what is this contraction again? We're contracting the muscles across the back of the chest to bring the shoulder blades and the shoulder joints closer to each other, right? Not closer to the head, closer to each other. And I feel it, I feel a lot of pull across the front of my chest when I do this. And we're holding this very active stretch. And then relaxing that and letting your body rest more heavily on the roller. Okay, so we're going to do that one more time. Your elbows, forearms, and the back of your hands are on the floor. And we're going to pull the shoulder blades and the shoulder joints closer to the spine by contracting muscles across the back of the chest. And I feel as if I'm kind of scrubbing my elbows towards my roller and holding that and breathing. And then relaxing that. Now, bring your arms all the way up into the air so that you can see your hands, your fingertips are pointing towards the ceiling. Okay. Now, let's practice healthy forward reach. So we're laying on our back, but forward reach is still the same thing. It's the action of extending the arms forwards away from the body. Now, so that causes us to reach towards the ceiling, okay? So what muscles are we using to do this action? Primarily, we're using the pectoral muscles on the front of the chest to reach the arms forward. And you'll also feel that kind of cross the shoulder joint and move into what we could call the inside of the arm.
right? So that's the action when you're laying on your back of reaching your fingers towards the ceiling. You've got to make sure that you haven't entangled that with lifting the muscles on the tops of your shoulders up towards your ears, right? So your shoulders need to feel like they've come down away from your ears and you're reaching forwards or up towards the ceiling in this situation. And then relax that effort. So let's see if we can make this a little healthier. First of all, I want you to feel like your shoulders are down from your ears, right? So how do we do that? How do we move the shoulders down from the ears in this position? Well, we have muscles, right, in the lower area of the shoulder blades that pull the shoulder blades down, okay? And once we pull down away from the ears, now we're going to start to reach for the ceiling, right? That should get you into this girdle around your chest area and out of your neck. And we hold that isometric effort, and then we relax that effort. So I'm breaking this down into two motions. The first is to depress the shoulders. That's moving them away from the head. Then we reach towards the ceiling. And what happens when I do this is I automatically, naturally contract my abdominals. So it gets me into my core to do this motion, to do this action. And then relax it. And we're going to do it one more time. So depression of the shoulders comes from a feeling of pulling down the back. And then we're reaching for the ceiling, which gets all the muscles around the girdle of the chest engaged and connects us to our core muscles. Now relax that effort and slowly open your arms out to a T, keeping your arms lifted away from the floor. Now let's begin to make circles with the arms held in this position. Can you shift from feeling like you're working from the tops of your shoulders and feel like you're doing something more from the area across your chest, from armpit to armpit, instead of higher up as you make these circles? Make it feel like this is coming from your armpits. And then reverse the direction that you're making these circles. Again, imagining that they're coming from your armpits. And then pause and let your arms come all the way down onto the floor and just relax that effort. Okay. Let's do a little stretch for the neck. So just keep your arms on the floor with your palms turned down, resting your elbows on the mat, and very gently allow your head to roll to the right until you begin to feel a stretch in the muscles that go from the left side of your neck down the left shoulder. Hold here and breathe for a few breaths. Nice and easy, bring your head back to the center. And then gently roll your head to the right. And as I roll my head to the right, I'm looking down at my left shoulder, softening the right side of my neck, and I feel that stretch from the back of my ear and jaw all the way down to my right shoulder joint. Holding that stretch and breathing. And then bringing the head back to the center. Good. Let's come off of the roller. And we're going to do a little bit to strengthen our lower core. So I'm going to have you return to laying on your back. And what I'd like you to do with your roller is to slip it underneath you so you have your pelvis supported by the roller. Okay, so going across the back of your pelvis.
And in terms of landmarks, the roller is slightly above where your tailbone is, but it is below your lumbar spine. So the back of the pelvis, it's pretty easy to tell that you're in the right place because it is like simultaneously lumpy and flat because the edges of your back of your pelvis are lumpy and your sacrum, which is the part of your spine that goes down between the two sides of your pelvis, is flat. Okay. Now, hang on to your roller lightly so it doesn't get away from you, and bring both of your feet up off the floor so your legs are up in a tabletop position. If you allow your knees to collapse into your chest, you will lose the tension in your lower core muscles. Okay. So when you have your legs in tabletop, you will feel the natural tightening or toning of your lower abdominal region. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do slowly is begin to make a circular motion with your legs and pelvis so that you're palpating or massaging the back of your pelvis against the roller. Right? So this is two benefits to this action. One is that we are massaging our own bodies, always a nice thing to do for oneself, and we are strengthening and toning our lower core region. Now, I want you to notice, if you can gently turn your head and see the computer, how low my feet are going towards the floor as I'm making this circular motion. See how my feet are coming down and then my legs are coming back through. And it's that action of movement that's happening through my hip joints that's really providing more strengthening and toning for my lower abdominal area. Okay? But if having the feet come that low to the ground causes you to feel any pain in your low back, then don't go as low as I'm going, right? Now pause at the center, and then we're going to reverse that circle. So you can make the circle smaller if that's what you need to do for your body. So I'm not flexing and extending my spine to do this movement of having my feet go down and then come back up again. I'm working through the muscles associated with my thighs and hips, not from my spine. Let's take a couple more circles around and come back to the center and place both of your feet down onto the floor. Now, I want to talk about how we can turn that movement that we just did, and we can add a third layer, right? So we have the layer of nice palpation of the tissues across the back of the pelvis. We have the layer of lower core strengthening, but there's a third potential layer, and that is upper body strengthening that emphasizes depressing the shoulders. Okay, now, how do we accomplish that third layer? Well, you have to hang on to the roller on the sides and grip the roller with your fingers, okay? The backs of your arms are going to be against the floor, and depending upon how long your arms are, you'll have some amount of bend in your elbow, okay? So the bend in your elbow, when you're in this position, it's going to reinforce the down pull of the shoulder, okay? If I locked my elbows, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to cause me to arch my upper body, or it's going to cause me to shrug my shoulders horrendously. So you have to have a little bend in the elbows. Now, if we bring the legs back up into this tabletop position, and we hang on to the roller with our elbows on the floor, what you should feel in this position is contraction under your armpits and into your chest. And if we add the movement of circling the legs around, circling the pelvis around, we should be able to plug in to the strength that we have available in our chest and under our armpits. So I want you to see if you can find that in yourself. Reverse the direction that you're circling. And I actually feel like I'm bending my roller a little bit because I'm pulling on it to depress my shoulders. So it's quite strenuous actually for the hands and the upper body. Let's come back to center and then let the feet rest down and relax those arms and shake them out, right? Okay. Now, let your arms just be a bit more relaxed this time, right? You can drape your hands over the roller if that you'd like a different position. But still, I want you to let the backs of your arms rest on the mat and bring your legs back up into a tabletop position. So this is working the hip socket and strengthening the lower core. We're going to go into leg flexion and extension, and we're going to add foot flexion and extension. So we're going to start in tabletop with our feet flexed, and one leg at a time, we're going to reach the leg and point the foot, bring the leg back and flex the foot, extend the leg and point the foot, bring the leg back and flex the foot, extending and pointing, and retracting and flexing, extending and pointing, retracting and flexing. Just continuing in this way and feeling the call and response that we get from the low abdominal core region. One more with point and flex. Pause in here. Now we're going to do both legs at the same time, pointing and flexing, pointing and flexing, feeling more tone developing in that low core area as we point and extend the legs and flex and retract. Let's do two more. Point and extend, flex and retract, and last one. Point and extend and flex and retract, and place those feet down onto the floor. Now, with your pelvis resting on the roller, bring your arms down to the ground with your palms flat so that your arms are right at the edges of your roller. So what you're going to do is just kind of press your arm wherever you contact the roller. Press lightly against the roller so that it doesn't get away from you. And with your feet hips distance apart, I want you to lift your hips off the roller and press up into bridge. Now you're going to sustain this bridge. Okay. What I want you to feel here is relaxing your low back, engaging your lower abdominal muscles as if you were trying to bring your pubic bone closer to your belly button, and feel how that produces a tremendous sense of stretch for the fronts of your thighs. Maintaining that muscle tone in the lower abdomen to tilt the pelvis. Now, with your arms straight and your palms down, I want you to do two things. I want you to draw your shoulders, the tops of your shoulders down away from your ears, and press the backs of your arms into the floor. And see if you can feel the connection to the muscles associated with your arms that are more a part of your back and less a part of your neck. Hold this isometric position for 3 more breaths. Shoulders down and back, arms pressing the floor. 1 more breath. Slowly soften that out. Push the roller out from underneath you. Pick up your feet, bring your knees towards your chest, and very gently circle your knees around. Now, here's an interesting thing. You don't even think about it. We're just doing this nice gentle release, but you could have immediately started shrugging your shoulders when you do this motion, right? So when you are hanging onto your knees and you're doing this loving action of circling your legs around and circling your pelvis against the floor, you have got to allow your elbows to flex and extend. Flex and extend. If you don't use your elbow joints and the muscles associated with flexing and extending your elbow joints, you are inevitably going to lift and shrug your shoulders when you do this action. Now let's release our feet to the floor, and we're going to turn ourselves over, and we're going to use the roller to release our thighs and to do some upper body strengthening. Okay, so we're going to turn and come into position where we have the roller positioned against the front of the thighs. Okay, and notice that my feet, the tops of my feet are on the floor. And then I'm going to set myself up in kind of like a forearm plank position, So my forearms are on the ground. My arms are in parallel to each other relative to my shoulder joints. Okay. And we're just going to hold this position for a moment, right, to feel the strengthening in the upper body. So first of all, we need a little bit of tone in the lower abdominal region so that the weight of the spine isn't collapsing towards the floor. So I want you to imagine, don't use your glutes, use your low abdominals to create muscle tone that sort of lifts the low abdominals away from the floor. Okay, now where is the strength in the upper body? Well, it is not in the neck. Okay, so what we want to feel here is that the upper shoulders are drawing down. We're depressing the shoulders. We're not trying to lift them up. We're drawing them down. And then the second contraction that we're going to do is drawing out away from the center of the body, as if you were trying to pull your elbows apart. And that should connect you with the muscles in the sides of your ribs, right? That's what we want to feel here. Now, what I want you to do is just hold this, gently lift your feet away from the floor, keeping your feet pointed. Just hold this effort and breathe. What to do with your neck and head? Well, look at the floor, look at the space between your two hands, and that should have your head in a fairly healthy position, holding this isometric effort. Let's just give this 1 or 2 more breaths, developing the strength and tone. Now, what I'd like to do is introduce some movement, okay? So what I'd like to do is to roll the roller so we're starting to move the chest away from the hands, and then draw the chest a little bit back towards the hands. It's not a big movement. You're maintaining the muscle tone in your abdomen. You have to release some of the tension you felt in the isometric hold, because if we have too much tension in the muscles, then we can't move from the joints. We can't move from the arms. So we're rolling away from the arms and we're drawing towards the arms, right? So the strength of our upper body, which includes our arms, is moving us in both directions. And at no point do I have to activate the muscles that go from my shoulders to my neck to my head, because there isn't anything there that's going to help us in this situation. So you're working from your trunk, not from your neck. Let's do that one more time. And then let's push all the way off of the roller and do something nice to release the tension that we might have just developed in our upper body. Okay. And by the way, nice means Pilates nice. So what I want you to do is drape your left arm or your right arm. Drape one arm over the roller and come onto your side. So the roller is right at the back of your armpit, and your arm is relaxed onto the floor, and your weight is right there in the crook of your armpit. Now put your other hand on the roller and turn your head to look at the floor, because that's going to be the easiest for your neck. And what I want you to do is just rock your body a little bit forward and backward to release the muscle tension that you might have just experienced in that motion area at the cuff of the back of the armpit. Right, so your head is turned and you're looking at your roller or you're looking at the floor. That should alleviate the strain from your neck being unsupported in this position. Just rocking the body to release this, I'm going to call it the sub-shoulder joint muscle tissue. And we'll do a few more rockings back and forth. And then put your hand on the floor or on the roller and gently press yourself up. Now I'm going to turn my back to you just so you have a slightly different view. So we're going to do this the other way, where we put the other arm over the roller, right? And our point of contact is kind of the crook, right just underneath the shoulder joint, kind of at the back of the armpit. Your arm is relaxed on the floor. You're turning your head and looking at your arm or the floor, right? Your other hand is on the roller, and you're just rocking your body to release this area. And we'll do a couple more palpations on this part. And also, again, when you're turning your head and looking towards the floor, that should actually give you a decent stretch on that side of your opposite side of your neck. And then we can press ourselves all the way up off of the floor. Okay. Now let's just put the roller off to the side for a moment and let's come on to our front side and come into a Sphinx position. So again, we're on our forearms. Our legs are long, the tops of the feet touching the mat. Okay. Now, oftentimes when a person sets up into the Sphinx, we don't have sufficient muscle tension to support us in this position. And so what ends up happening is we collapse. And wherever we collapse is where we're going to probably feel the worst. Okay? So it's important that the legs are toned, the buttocks are toned, the muscles that extend the spine are toned. So we're really using muscle tone to support this posture, to support this shape. We're not leaning into the arms, but we're also not consistently pushing the arms away from the floor, right? Because that's just going to exhaust the arms. The legs, the glutes, the muscles of the spine are all working to support this posture. So the arms are simply a piece of that. They're not the totality of the Sphinx, right? So think full body. Now, if we just stayed in the Sphinx, we could probably stay here for a while, but we're going to turn this into a movement that lengthens the fronts of our thighs. And that movement is to bend each knee twice, alternately flexing and pointing the foot while not losing that effort of the muscles of the spine and the muscles of the upper body and arms that support this posture, right? So one leg at a time, we're taking away
part of the support. But the leg that we're not using is still part of that support. So there is the coordination. One leg is steady and toned, and the other leg is moving. Let's do that one more time for each leg, and then come all the way down onto the belly, overlap the hands, and allow the forehead to rest on the hands while you swish your hips from side to side. And then let's turn ourselves over onto our backs and work on a little bit of rotation. So the first rotation that we'll do is going to be supine. That means we're laying on the floor. So laying on the floor, we'll reach our arms out across the floor with our palms facing up, and we'll bring the legs up into a tabletop position. So we're going to be twisting the lower body relative to the upper body. Okay? On your exhale, I'd like you to rotate your lower body a little bit to the right. Inhale, bring that back to center. And then exhale and rotate a little bit to the left. Inhaling to the center. Now, as you turn your lower body, that would be your legs, pelvis, and the lower portion of your spine in one direction, you want to feel that there's a slight sensation of counter rotation in your upper body, which consists of your rib cage and your upper spine. And your arms are also somewhat a part of that. And you can feel how we use the arms as part of that counter rotation. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're trying to physically twist your upper body, but you are activating the muscles associated with your upper body in connection with what you're doing with your lower body. So you just want to make sure you feel that your whole body is a part of this rotation. And that at no point do you need to lift your shoulders and shrug. Let's finish with a twist to the left. Coming back to center, place your feet down onto the floor. Now let's turn and press ourselves up to a seated position. And I'd like you to sit in the center of your mat with your feet as wide apart as your mat, and your feet are going to be flexed. Make sure that you're not locking out your knees and hyperextending them, right? So your legs can be relatively straight without hyperextending the knees. Okay, now this is, I've mentioned this before, but it's been a while. When we work with our arms held out in this position, we need to be clear on where does the support come from to hold the arms like this, okay? So primarily, we have these beautiful muscles at the top of the arm called the deltoid muscles, right? Basketball players and swimmers have really well-developed deltoid muscles. And the deltoid muscles are the primary muscles that hold the arms in this position. There is a little bit of tug at the top of the shoulder. You can't help it because the arm is heavy and there's a little bit of tug coming from the top of the shoulder. But if we imagine a sense of supporting the arm from underneath by having a little bit better muscle tone around the girth of the trunk, you may find that it puts less tension into the top of your shoulder. Now, from this position, what we're going to do is rotate the upper body relative to the lower body, and then come back to center. Now, when we rotate, is it necessary to lift the shoulders? It is not. So we want to pay attention. We want to pay attention as we rotate. Do we have to pick up our shoulders? No, we don't. Inhaling back to center, exhaling as we rotate. Inhaling back to center, exhaling as we rotate. Let's do one more. to each side, back to center, and rotating, back to center, and then float those arms back down by your sides. Now, I can feel the tension too at the top of my shoulders. Again, you're going to feel that because your arm is heavy. The important thing is to distribute the effort. That's what we're looking to do. Okay. We're going to do this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put our hands on the floor behind us, right? I can't think of any other way that I can get you into these muscles without doing this. So I apologize to those of you that have tender wrists, because we're going to do something that is going to put some weight into your hands, okay? So your knees are bent and your feet are flat, and your hands are behind you and your fingers are facing forwards. Now your elbows are going to be a little bit bent to start. And as you slide your pelvis up off of the floor and push up with your feet, you're going to straighten out your arms, right? And then as you set your pelvis back down, you may bend your arms a little bit, okay? So this is a movement that can only be accomplished if we relate to the strength of the arms as having to do with the torso and not with the neck and head. Otherwise, you won't be able to get yourself up off of the ground. This is a full body endeavor for the muscles on the back half of the body. The legs, the glutes, the back muscles, and the muscles associated with the upper body and the arms. Let's try it one more time. Lifting up and lowering all the way back down, right? And then just come off of your hands and shake them out. I've tried that on my forearms and it's impossible. There's no other way to do it except for to have that weight in your hands, okay? Let's give our arms a rest and turn and come on to our sides. We are going to stretch out the bottom arm, but we're going to bend both of the legs and rest the top arm on our side. And we'll do a little bit more work for our obliques, okay? So when we're doing this side bending and activating this oblique line on the side of the body, we want to think of working from the area of the armpit down to the pelvis, okay? So as you exhale, you're going to contract the muscles on the side of your body, and that draws your armpit down towards your hip. And then slowly release that. You're drawing your armpit and your ribs down towards your hip and then slightly releasing that. Now, I am bringing my arm with me. So there's a slight activation of the muscles that depress the shoulder, but this is not coming solely from depressing the shoulder. Depressing the shoulder is complementing the side bend, right? So again, depressing the shoulder is bringing it away from the ear. That's a secondary effort that complements the primary effort of contracting the obliques to side bend the trunk. Let's do two more. And we'll do one more. And come down. Now, we're going to restore some of the length here. So I'm going to have you stretch out your top leg in preparation for leg circles. Now, we're going to take our top arm and we're going to bring it overhead, okay? So here's how we're going to do that. We're first going to bring this arm forward. And as we bring the arm forward, we want to remember that the shoulder blade is not lifting, that the shoulder blade is actually wrapping down and around as the arm goes up. And then these hands can just meet over here. Don't try to jam your arms backwards, right?
So hands overhead can still be slightly forwards, okay? No need to tighten the muscles on the top of the shoulder. Now raise your top leg, tone your low abdominal area, and begin to draw circles with that top leg. Working the muscles that surround the hip and includes part of the glutes. And then let's reverse the direction of those circles. Take it one more time around. And then set that leg down and release your arms down. Put your hand on the floor and press yourself up. And then let's change that over to the other side. So we'll start with legs bent and stacked. Bottom arm extended up, head on your arm, and your top arm alongside your body. Okay. Remember that the action is you're drawing from the armpit down towards the pelvis, not the reverse. It's not pelvis towards armpit, it's armpit towards pelvis. And there's a slight sensation of shoulder depression as I engage my obliques, right? I'm also bringing the arm with me, complementary movement of depressing the shoulder. How's everybody doing? Good. Exhaling and inhaling. Bringing the shoulder with, not driving this from the shoulder, but including depression of the shoulder. Let's do two more. And one more time. And coming all the way down. Now straighten out that top leg in preparation for leg circles. To bring the top arm up, we're going to go forward and then have our fingers clasped, right? And again, that shoulder blade came way down here. It didn't go up here, right? When that arm went up, that shoulder blade dropped down kind of around my side. Now pick up your top leg and go into your leg circles, working the muscle tissue around the hip, toning the low abdominals to create stability for the spine. And then reverse the direction of those circles. Last one, relax the arm, release your hands, and you can roll yourself over onto your back. Let's just do a little movement to stretch out. So laying on your back with your knees bent, put your feet flat on the mat, nice and wide, right? Arms wide but very relaxed. And let's just do some slow motion leg tilting from side to side, allowing your neck and head to roll counter to the movement of your legs. And take that one more time from side to side. And let's hold this as a stretch. So tilt your knees to the right, roll your head to the left, and just pause and rest in this counter twist. Softening your neck and shoulders. Taking some deep breaths into your abdomen. And then bring everything back through the center, tilt your legs to the left, roll your neck and head to the right, softening everything, neck and shoulders, softening your belly, softening your hips and thighs. Enjoy a few deep breaths. And then bring it back to the center. And as you guys roll yourself to one side and bring yourself back to a seated position, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for our friends who couldn't join us today.